terrific. That's a great story. You were telling me before that as head of this whole mission design, you have had the opportunity to meet some very interesting people.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Oh, no, it's not all. I mean, there's a lot of hard work here where we stay in for hours and hours, but they're good moments.
Now, I know that Voyager was a very much a part of the Star Trek movie.
Oh, yes.
Star Trek 1 had Voyager in it,
right.
And that was really a couple of letters short of Voyager,
right.
And they actually captured an old Voyager.
Well, yeah.
So you must have been involved with the people who made Star Trek, right?
I was. I knew Roddenberry and had met Nimoy and Shatner. As a matter of fact, one time during the peak of the Star Trek craze, there was a Star Trek convention in Los Angeles, and I was invited to talk in between William Shatner and DeForest Kelley. And I talked to a group of 4,500, and let me tell you, that is a
Trekkies,
huge expanse of faces to see. I remember, and I was on a stage that must have been 15 ground, and if I'd fallen off, I would have killed myself. But in the making of the Star Trek The Motion Picture, we had wished they had consulted us a little bit more here, because the Voyagers have these gold-coated copper phonograph records,
right.
And on the outside is basically a chart that locates the origin of the spacecraft,
right.
By showing different pulsars and their directions from the sun. But I think in the movie script they had somehow mapped it back through the black hole that had flown through an almost impossible task.
If they had the chart, they could have gone right back?
Right, they could have just read it. Yeah.
Let me ask you one other thing that I'll let you go. There are, 2,000 celebrities and people have been invited to this?
Oh, a lot of people. Yes.
Tell me about that. Well, how did you choose who to invite, and how did JPL decide on it? And
all right,
a lot of politics involved in there. Sure. I mean, is that the hot ticket to have in town?
Right.
In the morning?
Well, I'm happy to say that's the legislative affairs aspect. As you might imagine, trustees of the California Institute of Technology, because the Jet Propulsion Laboratories Association, they're invited. Astronauts, Neil Armstrong was here last time around. Science fiction writers, Arthur Clarke has been invited, Ray Bradbury has been invited. A lot of people that have played a key role in space. Marvin Minsky, the artificial intelligence expert, obviously Congress people, congressional people.
Is there going to be one big bash for all of them on Friday?
Well, it turns out Friday and Saturday they will just basically be in their own rooms watching the pictures coming back,
right.
Okay? But now on Sunday, the Planetary Society is sponsoring a big bash, 2,000 people showing up at the JPL Mall.
And you don't have to feed them, right? You don't have to worry about it.
No, they're covering that. A Hollywood movie star that I probably can't announce will be the MC.
You heard it?
Oh, I probably could announce it.
Come on.
I'll tell you who it is. Sidney Poitier.
Sidney Poitier.
The Planetary Society basically is having this celebration as a thanks, a tribute to the men and women of Voyager for making this mission a success. And there will be banners flying and music and television coverage. And it is a time to celebrate. This mission is unparalleled.
And I think this has just been unbelievably successful.
It has. You've probably heard this before. Each spacecraft is made up of about 5 million equivalent electronic parts, if you count the transistors and everything. That's equivalent to about 2,000 color television sets. Well, imagine turning on 2,000 television sets and 12 years later having most of them working. I mean, the spacecraft were well designed. The missions, as we talked, we narrowed 10,000 cases down to 2. We believe that we've flown the best of discoveries. Unlike the early days where a space mission would go to one body, like the Moon, or to Venus, or even to Mars, the Voyagers have seen 50 worlds because they've gone to 4 giant kingdoms. It's only cost the taxpayer 20 cents per year, which is about half the cost of a vending machine candy bar. As a matter of fact, the total cost of Voyager to date over 17 years is only a little bit more than one B-2 bomber. Mm-hmm. So it's a bargain.
That raises the next obvious question is, how do you top that? For you personally, for JPL, is there anything that you can do to top this sort of thing?
Well, the way space exploration goes, you tend to move to, you start out with, in early reconnaissance phases, just simple flybys where you don't stop. Mm-hmm. Then if you find a world of interest, the next thing is to go into orbit around it and look at it for a period of time. And then after that you land. And then finally you collect a sample and then you bring it back to Earth. At least the one thing that will be happening over the next 10 or 15 years is you'll see this progression Galileo going into orbit around Jupiter, flying very close to the Galilean satellites. I mean, those volcanoes on Io that we saw, they'll see even closer. Cassini mission, a cooperative venture with the Europeans. You know, we will build a parent spacecraft, and the Europeans will build a Titan entry probe.
Going to where?
Back to Saturn,
right.
And the probe will land on Titan. Eventually, there may be a cooperative mission between the United States and the Soviets to go back to Mars, land on the surface, and one day bring a sample back.
The Soviets had said they're going to Mars. They're going
yes,
to take,
right, with or without us.
Right,
that's true. And so the sophistication of the missions, as they follow this exploration evolution, if you like, will become more and more so. I mean, imagine on the 6 o'clock news every night, looking at stereo photography from a rover, which is one of the well, maybe ancient riverbeds on Mars. Mm-hmm. That will be pretty exciting. I mean, as much as I love Voyager, and I will never forget it, I'd like to be looking at those color pictures of the Martian surface too.
So, so just as the last question, again, I guess if I were to give you a manager's dream and say, what if you had an unlimited budget and you could go anywhere and do anything, would Mars be your number one?
I think it still would.
Yeah.
Mars would still be number one.
I mean, we landed on a spot of Mars which really has very little chance of finding.
Well, it was safe.
Safe.
Remember, we
it's
didn't
flat,
want
a desert. You can't sink in the sand there.
Didn't want the Viking landers to topple over.
Right.
That was a big program.
Right.
And it tended to be that some of the most interesting regions looked a little dangerous, and some of the safest regions didn't look real interesting. And of course, they did land safely, and even saw, you know, and so forth. But I think a great place to land, the scientists are now convinced that Mars at one time, hundreds of millions of years ago, probably had episodes of running water, because you can find regions carved out in the sort of arroyos, the dry sands of Mars, that look like water flowed at one time. Now the question is, did some of that sort of sink in as permafrost and freeze? And if we went back and say maybe went into one of those tributaries, dug down a little ways, would things get interesting or not? Mm-hmm. I think Venus is awfully hot, and so 900 degrees Fahrenheit, I mean, you can't do much with that. The outer planets are quite cold,
yeah.
Although Europa, we think, has an ocean of water beneath the ice crust.
Well, best of luck to you, and you've been working on Voyager for at least 12 years that it's been out.
Right.
Thank you very, very much, Charles Cohayes, for coming and talking with us today.
Thank you, Ira.